Hey everybody, Mr. Troy here. Quick video on graphing in Quadratics, and then once you know how to do that, doing some word problems with Quadratics. Some of this is review of what we've already done, and some of it is new, so do make sure you watch through the entirety of the video. All right, here we go. So we're going to start by reminding ourselves how to graph in vertex form. Now, when you're in vertex form, you're going to find the vertex first. Then you're going to use the 1, 3, 5, 7 rule. So remember, when we have something like x minus h squared plus k, our vertex is h comma k. Here's what I mean by that. You take the opposite of the number inside the parentheses, and you use the number that is behind the parentheses without making it its opposite. So for this problem, it would be -2, -3. So you're going to mark your vertex, and then you're going to use the 1, 3, 5, 7 rule. Now the 1, 3, 5, 7 rule is always the steepness multiplied by 1, 3, 5, 7. The steepness is the number in front of the parentheses. So in this case, our changes would be 3, 9, 15, 21. The bigger those numbers are, the less likely they will be to fit on the graph. So what I mean by the changes is I mean every time you take a step over, you move up corresponding to these numbers. So your first step over from the vertex is up 3. Your first step backwards from the vertex is up 3. Your next step over would be up 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just a little bit off the top of our graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's always going to give us that nice characteristic curve called a parabola. Okay? The x-intercepts are going to be where the graph hits the x-axis, and that's always going to be where y equals 0. So in this case, -3, 0, and -1, 0. I'm just looking at the graph in order to say that. The y-intercept here is going to be what happens when x equals 0. So if I plugged 0 into the equation here, I would do 0 plus 2, then square that, then multiply by 3, then subtract 3. When I do all that, I'm going to get 9. My vertex is going to be that pair that I already found, -2, -3. Now, something that makes this problem a little bit more challenging is that there is no number out back. So our vertex here is going to be -2, 0. Our changes are going to be 1, 3, 5, 7, but multiplied by -2. So -2, -6, -10, -14. What that means is, as you step away from the vertex, you go over 1, down 2, back 1, down 2, over 1, down 6, and back 1, down 6. We only have one x-intercept here. It's -2, 0. If we plug in x equals 0, that's how we find the y-intercept. That would be 0 plus 2, that's 2, squared, that's 4, times negative 2, which makes 0 comma negative 8. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to do in Khan Academy. The thing that's going to be challenging is if you have a question pop up that says this. You're going to have to think about how you deal with the 1/2. The nice thing about Khan Academy is that it lets you play around with it, so you should be able to figure that out somewhat easily. Okay, then you're going to do an activity called quadratic word problems in Vertex form. And they're going to give you some sort of equation, and they're going to ask you for one of three things. They're going to ask you for either a beginning height, or they're going to ask you for when something will land or end, or they might ask you for the maximum height or the minimum height. So I want to talk about first how you would find the height of something after takeoff. So I want to make sure that we understand what's going on here. They say a hovercraft takes off from a platform, and its height is modeled by this equation. Now, that equation is going to have a vertex at 3/108, and it's going to open downwards. Now, we don't know exactly where it's going to land. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out. But that's the general path. The hovercraft is going to go up and then come back down. So it says, what was the height of the hovercraft at the time of takeoff? So we want to know when the time equals 0, what is h? Well, when the time equals 0, that's x. X equals 0. So just like we did before, we're going to plug in 0 to our equation. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Then we square and we get 9. We multiply by negative 3 and we get negative 27. And we add 108, and that gives us 81. So what this picture should really look like is it should really look like this. Like the hovercraft started somewhere and then went up in the air and then fell back down. Okay. How many seconds after takeoff will the hovercraft land on the ground? So I want to know, when is the height going to be 0? So I would say, well, 0 equals negative 3 times x minus 3 squared plus 108. Well, now this is just solving using the square root method that we learned last week. We subtract 108 from both sides. We divide by negative 3. So I'm going to take the square root here. Remember, when you take the square root, your next step has to have a plus or minus. So we actually have two equations. Negative 6 equals x minus 3, and positive 6 equals x minus 3. When we solve those equations, something funny happens. We get negative 3 equals x, and we get 9 equals x. Now, something can't land 3 seconds before it takes off, so that's not the answer we're looking for. We're going to throw out that negative answer, and we're going to take the answer of 9. The last thing they might ask you is for the maximum height or the minimum height. What you're looking for there is just the vertex. So just record whatever your vertex is. All right. Have fun with that. The activities that you're going to do are these two. Graph quadratics in vertex form and quadratic word problems in vertex form. All right, do your best. Have fun.